Welcome, my friend. You've found your way to a quiet place tonight. There's nothing you need to do, nothing you need to fix, nowhere you need to go. Let your shoulders soften just a little. Let your jaw unclench. Take a slow breath in and let it fall out gently. Just let the day slowly fade behind you. You can listen, or simply let the sound rest in the background. Either way is perfectly fine. When you're ready, we'll begin a gentle story, meant for calm, for comfort, and for overthinking minds ready to rest. Night settles gently over the quiet town, the way a blanket is drawn up over someone who has finally stopped moving for the day. The streets soften into shadow. The last echoes of distant footsteps fade to nothing. Windows across the village glow, warm as tiny constellations, each one holding a story, a life, a breath. Just beyond the farthest lane, at the bend where the cobblestones give way to earth, there rests a small workshop. Its wooden sign, worn smooth by time and weather, bears the faint carving of a lantern, and inside, that lantern glows with a tender amber light that never seems harsh, never too bright, simply enough. Enough to guide, enough to soothe, enough to make everything feel unhurried. The doorway creaks in the gentlest way when opened, like an old friend greeting another. And as you step inside, the air welcomes you with the scent of polished wood, faint beeswax, and something warm, not quite spice, not quite smoke, but a pleasant reminder of evenings spent safely indoors. Shelves line the walls, each one filled with small figures, carved slowly, thoughtfully. There are animals frozen in soft movement, miniature cottages with tiny windows, trees whose branches seem to stretch mid-whisper. None are perfect. That is their magic. Every curve, every delicate notch carries patience and intention. At the center of the workshop stands a long wooden table, marked with years of quiet work. Scratches and grooves hold stories too, the kind that don't need words. The amber lantern sits at the far end, illuminating half of the room and letting the other half fade into peaceful shadow. The glow is steady, softening edges. Outside, the night sky deepens, but here, time seems to slow. The mind loosens. Breath becomes longer, gentler, almost sensing with the soft stillness of the room. This place is not loud with creation. It doesn't demand attention. It simply holds space for memory, for reflection, for rest. And tonight, you are invited to linger here, quietly, as the world outside sleeps. You are welcome to let your shoulders ease, to feel your thoughts unfurl like ribbons that finally come loose. Let the warmth of the lantern drift over you. Let the whisper of carved wood calm the corners of your mind that have worked too hard. There is no urgency here, no deadlines, no noise that asks anything of you. just a workshop, an amber lantern, and the steady peace of someone who believes that slow, gentle work can hold entire memories inside it. And as the evening continues, the story of this humble, glowing place unfolds softly, not to excite, but to cradle the quiet part of you that longs for calm. Night deepened beyond the windows, turning the outside world into a velvety hush. The workshop, however, remained an island of gentle radiance. The lantern on the table gave off its mellow glow, as though it remembered every night before it and understood exactly how to light the room. Never intruding, always comforting. The workshop belonged to a quiet craftsperson known simply as Elias. People in town rarely used his last name anymore. It wasn't out of disrespect. It was because the workshop itself had become his identity. If someone mentioned the lantern place or the carver at the edge of town, everyone knew who they meant. Elias moved with the patient rhythm of someone who had learned not to rush life. Not tall, not imposing, not especially remarkable at first glance, and yet, when he stood beneath the lantern's glow, he carried a presence both calm and steady, like a shoreline that had welcomed countless quiet tides. Tonight, he worked on a small wooden box, nothing ornate, nothing elaborate. Its surface was smooth from hours of sanding, corners rounded carefully, as though meant to be held in the palm. The lid had not yet been carved, and that was where Elias paused, running his fingertips thoughtfully along the grain. He did not force the design. He never did. He believed that the wood remembered something long before he touched it, and his role was only to listen long enough to find what wanted to appear. The workshop walls bore silent witness to years of patient crafting. On one shelf rested a line of carved birds, each captured mid-flight, wings frozen as if suspended by an invisible breeze. Another shelf held tiny lanterns, replicas of the very one glowing now, each carved with careful respect for softness, not precision alone. Between shelves, bundles of wood hung, all different in tone: pale maple, honeyed oak, deep walnut with streaks like distant storms. The pieces waited quietly, neither urgent nor forgotten, simply ready for when the right moment arrived. Elias leaned forward and exhaled softly, not from exhaustion, from intention. His carving knife, simple and well-loved, fit naturally into his hand, like an instrument left tuned between songs. The first gentle shaving curled upward. It didn't fall quickly. It spiraled, weightless, drifting onto the table like a tiny ribbon of memory being released. Elias smiled faintly, watching it settle among others. To anyone else, it might have seemed like just wood chips. But here, everything had meaning. He carved not for display, not for profit. Though the townspeople occasionally purchased a piece as a keepsake, but for remembrance, for all the quiet evenings that slip through life unnoticed, for the moments people think are too ordinary to treasure until they miss them. The amber lantern had hung in the workshop since before Elias was born. His grandfather had placed it there, telling stories of how light could carry comfort if it was tended with patience. His father tended it next, and then, like a tradition that didn't need formal words, Elias continued. But carved memories were Elias's addition. He believed that wood could hold emotion in its grain, the way trees held seasons in rings that no one saw unless they looked closely. When he carved, it felt like tracing time with quiet appreciation. Outside, a soft breeze moved through branches. Leaves rustled, but gently, the hush of night speaking quietly to itself. Inside, the only sounds were the slow scrape of knife on wood, the lantern's subtle flicker, and Elias's calm, even breathing. Occasionally he paused, not because he was unsure, but because sometimes the most meaningful part of carving was waiting, listening, allowing memory to reveal itself. Tonight, however, there felt like something different in the air, not tension, not mystery that demanded solving, simply a sense that this particular piece of wood wished to become something special. Elias closed his eyes, and in the dim glow, memories shimmered at the edge of thought, not dramatic ones. Nothing dramatic lived here. He remembered evenings long ago, when he was a child, half asleep in the corner of the workshop, while his father carved by lantern light. The steady sounds, the scent of warm wood, the rhythm of breathing in the quiet room. Those nights had felt endless, safe. And as he held the small wooden box, he wondered, could he carve that feeling itself? Not a scene, not an object, just the emotion of sitting with someone who loves what they do, while night wraps around the world and life feels simple. He traced another line with the tip of his knife, this time more sure. Slowly, gentle curves began to appear on the lid, not symmetrical, but naturally flowing, as though inspired by rivers, wind, and the gentle arch of lantern flame. Each curl of wood fell gracefully, joining the others in soft piles that made the workshop feel like a nest of patience. Hours did not matter. Time in the lantern workshop moved not forward, but deeper into stillness, into understanding, into the kind of quiet where thoughts no longer chased one another restlessly, but began to soften, dissolve, drift. The lantern hummed with warmth, the shelves kept their tranquil watch, and the night outside deepened into something not dark, but peaceful. In this gentle space, it felt possible for anyone, even the most restless mind, to breathe slower, to let go of worries piece by piece. The way wood surrendered thin shavings under a careful hand. Something calm was being shaped. not just in wood, but in the air around it. And whether visitors came tonight or tomorrow, whether anyone ever asked for this small carved box at all, the workshop would continue just as it always had, holding light, holding memory, holding the quiet promise that simple things, when cared for patiently, can carry extraordinary comfort. The evening unfurled slowly, as if time itself had decided to loosen its grip and drift quietly through the rafters of the workshop. Outside, the sky moved from dusky lilac to a deep velvet blue, and the first few early stars shimmered, faint at first, above the crooked roofs of the small town. The world beyond the window seemed to exhale, and the amber lantern workshop responded with a quiet sigh of wood and warmth. Inside, the soft glow of lanterns deepened, turning the golden light richer, almost honey-like. Every carved figure, every polished curve, every unfinished piece of wood seemed wrapped in a gentle shimmer. Shadows softened against the walls, and they did not feel like darkness, only like another layer of the room's comforting embrace. The scent of the workshop settled into something even cozier, not quite new, not quite old, a calm mixture of wood shavings, warm oil, and faint traces of chamomile tea drifting from a small clay mug resting on a work table. That mug looked as if it had belonged there forever, as though each night it patiently waited to be warmed again. And in the stillness there was the subtle rhythm of the place. Not music, not silence, something in between. A gentle brushing sound, the slightest rasp of a carving tool smoothing the curve of a wooden shape, and the slow, steady breaths of someone fully present, fully calm, fully at peace with the quiet. The lantern nearest the door flickered softly. The amber light seemed to pool across the floor like liquid gold, stretching toward the far shelves where small carved figures rested, animals, little houses, tiny boats, and elegant shapes that suggested memory more than form. Each one appeared to hold a secret, not in a way that invited curiosity, but in the way old trees hold rings of history, quiet, serene, and content simply to exist. You walked further into the workshop, your movements naturally slower now. The air felt warmer near the workbench, and you could feel the gentle invitation of the room encouraging you to exhale a little deeper. The weight in your chest, whatever thoughts you brought here, whatever noise had followed you from the waking world, began to loosen, dissolving like mist in sunlight. Across the long wooden table, the caretaker of the workshop, the quiet figure who had welcomed you earlier, lifted their gaze and offered a soft smile. Not a broad, flashy gesture, just a small, knowing curve, the kind of smile that said, "You're safe here. There is no rush. Stay as long as you need." They didn't hurry to speak. There was no need for words to fill the space. Silence felt welcome here, not empty, not awkward, but nurturing, like a blanket gently tucked around tired shoulders. The caretaker continued to work, guiding a carving tool along the smooth surface of a small block of pale wood. With every slow motion, with every careful breath, the wood revealed something new, a soft outline gradually forming, subtle curves appearing as though the figure inside had always been there, waiting quietly to be invited out. You stood nearby, listening. There was something almost meditative about the process, a rhythm that calmed every restless thought. The caretaker's hand moved forward, paused, then returned, and with each soft scrape, the workshop seemed to lean closer into tranquility. Eventually, they placed the carving down and gestured gently toward a stool. You sat. The stool felt sturdy, grounded, and the wood beneath you held a faint warmth, as if it remembered every person who had rested there before. Above, one of the amber lanterns glowed brighter for a moment and then settled, giving the illusion that it understood the importance of this quiet companionship. The caretaker finally spoke, softly, almost like a whisper woven into the room's natural silence. "Wood listens," they said gently. "It carries stories, not loud ones, not dramatic ones, just the kinds of stories that come from living, changing, and remembering." Their voice blended with the lantern light, warm, steady, patient. They lifted another small piece of wood and ran their fingers along its grain, tracing invisible lines the way someone might follow an old map. "This workshop," they continued, "doesn't just shape wood. It helps people discover which memories are ready to rest and which ones want to be gently held." There was nothing mystical in the statement, nothing heavy, only quiet truth, spoken with care. You watched their hands again as they returned to carving. This time, the piece began to take shape more clearly. A small lantern, much like those glowing around the workshop. Tiny patterns formed on its imagined glass, intricate and delicate, yet carved with a steadiness that suggested years of practice. Every careful motion seemed to say, "Slow down, breathe, trust the process." Outside, the breeze shifted, brushing softly against the window pane. Somewhere distant, the faint sound of a river moving over stones echoed through the night, so steady and slow that it sounded almost like a lullaby written by the earth itself. The caretaker finished the little lantern carving and set it gently beside you. For some people, they whispered, "Light comes from remembering." For others, it comes from letting things gently fade. They offered the carving without insistence, letting it sit beside your hand. Whether you touched it or not didn't matter. The important thing was simply that it existed, a small symbol of warmth, of guidance, of calm illumination. You looked around the room again. On one shelf you noticed figures shaped like intertwined hands, capturing a sense of connection and comfort. On another, small wooden birds with wings spread mid-flight rested with serene stillness, as though even in stillness they carried stories of distance and return. Nothing here was perfect. Every piece wore its natural marks, small grooves, gentle textures, each one adding to its authenticity. Instead of flaws, they felt like tender reminders life leaves traces, but traces can be beautiful. The caretaker stood and moved toward another section of the workshop, motioning softly for you to follow. You walked past a long row of drawers, each labeled with handwritten script, smooth curves of ink that hinted at timeless patiency. Walnut, birch, cedar, maple, olive. Each word carried its own personality. You could almost sense the different kinds of calm each wood held, like subtle variations of the same peaceful melody. The caretaker opened one of the drawers, revealing pieces of pale, unfinished wood resting like quiet clouds. They lifted a small block and placed it onto the table, turning it slowly beneath the lantern light. Sometimes, they said, people come here when their thoughts feel too heavy. This place invites them to rest a while and to let the weight be shared. They handed the block gently toward you, not as a task, but as an invitation to simply feel its texture beneath your fingertips. The wood was cool at first, then slowly began to warm under your touch. It felt real, grounded, as though holding something solid made your thoughts less scattered. The smooth edges softened in your palm, and you found yourself breathing out more deeply than before. No expectation, no judgment, just presence. The caretaker placed a small carving tool beside the wood. Not to work, they reassured softly, sensing the thought before it could arise. Only to understand that shaping is never rushed. It always happens when the heart is ready, and only as gently as it needs to. Their words drifted around you like lantern light. Nearby, another shelf held polished wooden boxes, each one unique, simple but meaningful. Some were embossed with leaf patterns. Others bore small constellations etched into their lids. There was something comforting about their quiet purpose, places meant for safekeeping. This workshop, the caretaker said, is filled with memories that have found a peaceful shape. They turned one of the boxes slowly, and the light touched it just right, making the carved design glow softly. The pattern looked like a path winding through trees, relaxing and inviting, leading nowhere urgent and everywhere calm. A calmness deepened inside you, subtle but unmistakable. Thoughts still existed. They didn't vanish completely, but they softened, as though drifting to the back of your mind. the edges of worry rounded. The momentum of overthinking slowed to a gentle drift, like leaves floating downstream. You noticed that even your body had begun to settle differently, shoulders loosening, jaw unclenching, breath lengthening naturally, time stretching into something wide and gentle. The caretaker moved again, lighting another lantern with practiced ease. The flame caught and glowed, and the workshop brightened just slightly, like a deepened promise of comfort. Lanterns remind us, they said in that quiet voice, that even gentle light is enough. They didn't elaborate. They didn't need to. You walked a little deeper into the room, passing beneath a beam carved with flowing patterns that resembled waves or wind, or perhaps simply the movement of stories traveling through years. Each curve seemed designed with patient intention. Nothing hurried, nothing forced. At the far corner, tucked almost out of sight, was a small alcove. Within it sat a long, low table covered in a soft, woven cloth. Resting atop the cloth were unfinished carvings, not abandoned, only patiently waiting. A few appeared to be figures in the early stages of formation's soft outlines, rounded shapes, suggestion rather than clarity. Not everything needs to be finished at once, the caretaker murmured. Some memories take their time. A soft comfort spread through the workshop at those words, as if the room itself nodded in agreement. You sat beside the alcove for a moment, letting your eyes trace the lazy flicker of the lanterns. Each flame swayed gently, responding to small currents of air you couldn't see. The light brushed the carvings, casting delicate shadows that settled and swayed like leaves in the evening breeze. The caretaker poured 2 cups of tea, steam curling upward like tiny clouds, and placed one near you. The mug warmed your hands, grounding them. The flavor was mild, lightly floral, with notes that matched the calm atmosphere perfectly. You took a slow sip. Warmth filled your chest, spreading gently outward, joining the lantern glow and the softness of the room. Everything layered into a slow, soothing harmony. There was no rush to speak, no expectation to analyze, just the simple reassurance of being present. After a while, the caretaker placed a hand on the edge of the table, fingertips resting thoughtfully upon the wood. Every night, they said, people leave a little lighter than when they arrived. Not because anything is erased, but because what they carry learns how to rest. You let that thought linger in the quiet air. Rest, not force, not fix, simply rest. Outside, the town had grown deeper into night. Lamps along quiet streets were barely visible through the window, their glow softened by distance and cool glass. Somewhere, a door closed gently. A dog barked once, then settled again. The river continued its peaceful, eternal murmur. The caretaker began to tidy their tools, not out of necessity but out of rhythm. Each tool was placed gently back in its place, aligned out of respect, as though the simple act of putting things away was its own meditation. You watched, noticing how everything here seemed designed to support quiet. Smooth surfaces, rounded edges, soft colors, light that never glared, shadows that never pressed, a sanctuary disguised as a workshop. After a pause, the caretaker turned back to you. "When you leave," they said softly, "this place doesn't disappear. The calm you feel here travels with you, the way the scent of wood lingers on your hands." Their words weren't grand. They were simple, grounded, and entirely sincere. You looked once more at the unfinished carvings, the boxes, the patterns, the lantern sculptures. All of them seemed to hum with the same gentle messaging. You are allowed to slow down. You are allowed to breathe. You are allowed to rest. The night deepened further, and the lanterns glowed like quiet constellations hung at eye level. The room felt like a pocket of time, sheltered from everything beyond its wooden walls. And so you remained, not doing anything remarkable, not solving anything, not chasing any moment, simply existing in the warmth and softness of the amber lantern workshop, while the world outside moved gently forward, unhurried, unthreatening, far away. Here, the only thing asked of you was this: stay, be still, let the calm take root, and gradually, without you realizing exactly when it began, you felt something shifting inside, not dramatic, not sudden, simply a soft rearranging. Thoughts settling like snowflakes on a quiet winter night, emotions untangling into simple threads, a new kind of quiet forming, not from emptiness, but from peace. The caretaker glanced once more toward the window, then back to you, their expression warm, trusting, patient. "Part of the story is just learning how to be here," they whispered, "and you're already doing that beautifully." You breathed in the warm scent of cedar and lantern oil. You breathed out whatever tension still lingered, and the workshop held you, unrushed, unburdened, completely at ease. Night had fully settled over the town, yet the amber lantern workshop seemed brighter, not in intensity, but in presence. The glow had matured into something steady and reassuring, like a lighthouse whose purpose was never urgency, only quiet guidance. Outside, the air was cool and velvet soft. A thin silver moon rested above the rooftops, leaning its light across the sky with unhurried grace. The distant river whispered to the stones along its banks, and the world beyond the workshop continued peacefully, wrapped in its own rhythm. Inside, time continued to loosen. It wasn't that hours stopped existing. They simply stopped insisting. The caretaker moved with thoughtful ease, and you found yourself following the flow naturally, as though you'd been part of this workshop for far longer than a single night. They guided you to another section of the room, near a long shelf carved with delicate swirling patterns. The designs were not ornate in a showy way. They moved like slow currents of air, crossing gently over one another. When the lantern light touched them, the grooves glowed softly, as though lit from within. This side of the workshop, the caretaker said, voice low and restful, is where we keep the pieces that have already learned how to rest. There was reverence in their tone, not sadness, not nostalgia, only deep respect. You stepped closer. Spread across the shelf were carvings of all shapes and sizes. Some were smooth and abstract, their forms soft like river-worn stones. Others hinted at familiar shapes, figures seated together, trees bending in calm breezes, windows looking out over imagined landscapes. Each one carried a stillness that felt alive. The caretaker picked up a small sculpture, shaped like a gentle arch. Nothing more than a curved piece of polished wood, and held it for a moment in the lantern glow. This one, they said softly, came from someone who spent years believing they had to hold everything alone. They traced a finger along the curve. When they finally felt supported, they continued. The memory softened. The weight of it found a place to rest, and the shape you see here is how that feeling chose to stay. Their expression wasn't analytical or distant. It was warm, quietly grateful for the calm that remained after the storm of emotion had passed. You listened, not for drama, not for backstory, but for the deeper truth beneath their words. Memories can change shape, not erased, not removed, only smoothed, softened, gently re-carved into something kinder to carry. You let your fingertips brush the arch. The wood held a deep warmth, as though it remembered the hands that shaped it and wanted to pass along the gentleness it had learned. On the next section of the shelf, you noticed figures shaped like small doors, each carved slightly open. The openings were narrow and inviting, revealing nothing behind them, only suggestion. The caretaker smiled softly. These remind people that it's all right not to know everything at once. Some understandings arrive when they're ready, and not a moment sooner. The words rested in your mind like quiet snow, dissolving slowly into calm. You realized something subtle. Your thoughts were quieter than when you had arrived. Not numb, not blank, simply softer. Thoughts moved like slow clouds drifting through an open sky. They came, they lingered briefly, then continued along gently. A sense of trust unfolded inside you. Trust not in certainty, but in the acceptance that you didn't have to solve anything tonight. You walked with the caretaker toward another table, situated beneath a cluster of lanterns. This table was different, more spacious, its surface smooth from decades of gentle work. Resting on it was a long, thin plank with carved symbols along its edge. "What is this one?" you asked quietly, surprised at how soft your own voice had become, as if speaking loudly would disturb the peace of the room. The caretaker traced one of the symbols. "Our timeline," they said, but the word sounded tender rather than analytical. Someone once wanted to understand where they had been, not because they felt lost, but because they wanted to thank the moments that carried them forward, even the difficult ones. They tapped one of the carved marks where the lantern light deepened into shadow. "Here," they said gently. They learned to rest. You breathed in deeply, almost unconsciously. To rest, it returned again, like a refrain written into the wood of the world. You could feel it now. The workshop didn't try to change people. It didn't command, didn't push, didn't demand reflection. Instead, it created an environment where understanding could bloom naturally, the way leaves unfurl when the weather turns gentle enough. The caretaker stepped aside for a moment, allowing you space. You wandered slowly across the room, letting curiosity guide you without expectation. The grain patterns in the floorboards swirled and curved, resembling flowing streams. You followed one with your eyes until it faded beneath the workbench. Beyond the bench was a tall cabinet with clear doors. Inside, wood pieces rested upright, leaning together as if in quiet conversation. Each piece bore a marking, soft pencil strokes identifying where it came from. Some were older, darker, smoother. Others were newly cut, pale, fresh, smelling faintly of growth. The caretaker rejoined you and opened the cabinet. "Every piece of wood has lived a life before it arrives here," they explained softly. "It has stood in wind and rain. It has been shaped by seasons. When it arrives at the workshop, nothing about its past is considered a mistake." They lifted one slender stave, showing its slight bend, its irregular knot near one end. "This is not a flaw," they said gently. "It is a story." The word story felt different now, no longer bound to narrative or complication, but connected to presence, to existence itself. You found a seat near the long window, where the glass reflected the lanterns inside, while showing glimpses of the moonlit outside world. Your reflection merged softly with the workshop's glow and the faint silhouette of rooftops beyond. The caretaker quietly set another mug of tea near you, this one slightly sweeter, with notes of honey. You didn't need to talk. You didn't need to understand anything more than this moment. The tea warmed your hands. Your breath slowed further. A sense of being gently, lovingly held settled around your chest. not by any person in particular, but by the atmosphere itself, by the wooden walls, the lantern light, the quietly listening tools, the grain patterns, the steady calm. After a few peaceful minutes, the caretaker spoke again, their voice drifting like a soft ribbon across the room. "There is something people often discover here," they said. "Memories don't ask to disappear. They only ask not to carry more than they were meant to." You felt the truth of that, not as a logical idea, but as warmth spreading softly through your body. Not everything had to be unpacked tonight. Not every story needed retelling. The caretaker reached into a drawer and withdrew a small, unfinished carving. It appeared to be the beginning of a bridge, two ends gently rising, but not yet meeting in the middle. "This one," they said softly, "is waiting for the right moment. Not because it is broken, but because the person it belongs to is still learning how to cross gently." They set it down with the same reverence given to every piece in the room. A pleasant stillness wrapped around you. The lantern flames swayed again, slow and hypnotic. Shadows wandered carefully along the shelves, stretching, then softening into stillness. You noticed the caretaker glance at the door, not as if expecting anyone, but as though acknowledging that the workshop always remained open to those who needed quiet. "This place," they said, "exists so that the fast world out there doesn't have to follow you everywhere." The sentence lingered. A sanctuary inside the night, a pause inside the story of living. You felt your body sink deeper into the chair, not in exhaustion, but in surrender, a relief that came from realizing it was safe to let go, just a little more. Minutes slipped past like gentle waves, their edges dissolving softly. Time curved, smoothing itself until it felt almost circular. No beginnings, no endings, only presence. Eventually, the caretaker stood again, moving toward a small wooden chest near the far wall. They opened it slowly, revealing rows of tiny lantern carvings, each with a distinct design. "These," they said, "here for people who want a reminder that calm can return." Some take them home. Some simply choose one in their thoughts and carry its light inside them. You looked at the collection, each lantern softly unique, some etched with leagues, others with moon-like circles, others with lines that suggested gentle paths through quiet forests. Without rushing, you let your eyes rest on one carving in particular, its sides engraved with flowing waves that cradled a tiny carved flame at its center. Nothing extraordinary, nothing showy, just peaceful. The caretaker noticed and nodded quietly. "Then that one," they said, "will be yours for tonight, whether you hold it physically or only in your heart." They handed it to you gently. It was lighter than you expected, but solid, its surface polished, its edges soft enough to invite touch. The small flame shape carved inside caught the lantern light, giving the feeling of a glow within glow. A soothing warmth spread across your palms as you held it. No magic, no spell, just the comforting knowledge that something gentle was there, something that represented stillness, warmth, and permission to soften. The caretaker's expression grew even quieter, more peaceful. Whatever you carried with you when you arrived, they said, does not have to vanish, but it can rest here for a while. This workshop will hold it gently, the way the grain holds the history of the tree. You nodded slowly. Inside, something loosened further, like a knot finally realizing it didn't need to pull tighter to stay intact. It could simply release, strand by strand, until the tension faded into softness. The caretaker moved toward the back of the room, where an arched doorway led into a smaller adjoining space. They motioned for you to follow if you wished, without expectation. You rose and stepped through. The smaller room held almost nothing, just a single long bench, a lantern suspended from the ceiling, and a window looking out toward the river. The sound of water was clearer here, gently repeating its soothing lullaby. This is where people sit, the caretaker whispered, when they are ready to listen to their breath again. You sat, letting the lantern's quiet glow spill across your lap. Your breath came and went, soft, unforced, in, like the lantern brightening, out like the shadows softening. There was no guidance spoken aloud, no instruction, yet your breathing slowly found its own peaceful rhythm, sensing naturally with the subtle sway of the flame and the calm murmur of the river. The caretaker stood near the doorway, present but not intrusive, offering silent reassurance simply by being there. You gazed through the window. Moonlight shimmered upon the river's surface, turning the slow, moving water into a ribbon of silver. Trees along the bank swayed slightly in the night breeze, their branches drawing invisible letters across the sky, letters that spelled out nothing urgent, only tranquility. A faint memory surfaced, not sharp, not painful, simply a moment when life felt simpler, slower. The memory didn't overwhelm. It arrived gently, acknowledged your presence, and settled like a comfortable blanket across your shoulders. The workshop allowed it to exist without weight, and in that stillness, the message of the place seemed to whisper through every wall, every lantern, every grain of wood. It is safe to soften. It is safe to rest. It is safe to be exactly as you are in this moment. Time drifted, thoughts floated. The caretaker finally stepped closer, speaking in the softest voice yet. Tonight is not about finishing anything, they said. It is about allowing your heart to stretch out in the quiet. the way wood relaxes when it meets warm light. You closed your eyes for a moment. The warmth, the scent of cedar, the lull of the river, the feather, light scrape of tools being tidied in the other room. Everything blended into one soothing tapestry. And slowly, so gently you hardly noticed it happening, the night carried you deeper into the calm of the amber lantern workshop, deeper into a stillness that felt like home, while the moon watched quietly from above, and the lanterns glowed like small, patient stars within the sheltering walls. The deeper into the night the world drifted, the more the workshop seemed to breathe with you. Not loudly, not noticeably, just a subtle rhythm, the way a calm tide moves in and out along a quiet shoreline. You remained seated on the long bench in the smaller room, watching the river through the window. The lantern's glow above you pulsed gently, as though its only task was to remind the darkness how to stay kind. The caretaker returned after a while, footsteps soft as falling dust. They paused before entering, honoring the stillness as if it was something sacred, and then stepped forward with a serene smile. "How does the quiet feel?" they asked, more like a breath than a question. You thought for a moment. It didn't feel empty. It felt full of space, full of patience, full of acceptance. "It feels gentle," you replied softly. The caretaker nodded, deeply pleased, not because you had given the right answer, but because the quiet truly belonged to you now, not just to the room. They gestured for you to follow them back into the main workshop. As you stepped through the arched doorway, the lantern light welcomed you like familiar faces, recognizing you, acknowledging your presence without a single word. The tools rested neatly in their places. The carved pieces shimmered softly along their shelves. Everything seemed calm, grateful for your return. The caretaker moved toward an area you hadn't noticed before, a low table near the back wall, half hidden by taller sculptures. On the table rested a single lantern, unlike the others. It was carved from pale wood, its surface untouched by stain. The panels were open at the sides, revealing delicate latticework, interwoven loops and curves that looked like pathways crossing gently, never colliding. The flame inside wasn't fire. It was a soft glowing stone. Its light didn't flicker the way ordinary lantern light does. Instead, it glowed from the center outwards, slow, steady, almost like a heartbeat. "This," the caretaker whispered reverently, "is the listening lantern." The name alone seemed to slow your breath even further. You stepped closer. The glow did something unusual, not brighter, not dimmer, simply attentive. It welcomed your gaze the way a calm lake welcomes a reflection. "What does it listen to?" you asked quietly. The caretaker's eyes softened. whatever is ready to be spoken or not spoken. They pulled out one of the wide wooden stools and invited you to sit. You settled in front of the lantern, feeling the warm air around it soften the coolness of the night. Most people, the caretaker continued, carry one thought that grows heavier when evening arrives. It may not be a problem. It may simply be unfinished. This lantern doesn't need to hear the whole story. It only rests beside the weight until the weight remembers how to breathe. Their words moved through the room like a slow stream. You didn't rush. You didn't search inside yourself urgently. Instead, you waited. The lantern's glow seemed to invite patience. Slowly, without effort, one quiet thought drifted forward. A thought not loud, not dramatic, simply persistent. Something you'd been carrying, perhaps without realizing. Something about expectation or time, or the soft pressure of being more than you felt able to be. The lantern did not react. It did not flare or pulse or respond in any overly magical way. It simply stayed, still, warm, present. And that, somehow, was enough. The caretaker stayed by the workbench, giving you space, their presence calm and grounding, like a guardian of silence. Minutes passed, though it didn't feel like passing. The weight within you gently rearranged itself, not dissolved, not fixed, simply placed somewhere more comfortable, like stacking wood until it fits evenly. You felt yourself breathe more deeply than earlier. The air carried faint notes of resin, sap, and something almost like honey. It filled your chest with warmth before drifting slowly outward. The caretaker returned quietly. "Would you like to carve tonight?" they asked softly. The invitation felt less like a request and more like an offering. You nodded. They selected a small block of wood from the cabinet, soft, grained, smooth, pleasantly light in your hand, and brought it to the workbench. They chose the gentlest blade, its handle worn from years of calm use, and placed it beside the block. "This won't be complicated," they said kindly. "It isn't about skill. It's about letting your hands discover shapes your mind doesn't need to control." They sat beside you at the bench, guiding you slowly, not through instruction, but through pace. You made the first small shaving. The whispering glide of wood peeling back was one of the softest sounds you had ever heard. It curled like a ribbon and floated away, joining delicate spirals on the table. Each stroke released a faint, comforting scent from the grain, warm, earthy living. Your hands moved without hurry, pressing gently, easing away layers so thin they almost looked like falling feathers. The room seemed to lean closer, appreciating the calm effort. The lantern softened, the night air deepened. "That sound," the caretaker murmured, "is the sound of something becoming lighter." You continued carving, not shaping anything specific, only removing tension, smoothing edges, rounding corners. Every motion invited stillness further into your chest, as if the blade carved away not just wood, but the habit of holding on to worries too tightly. Eventually, the block began to take shape on its own. It became something like a small stone, rounded, palm-sized, with no sharpness left anywhere. Your hands slowed. The caretaker examined the piece with quiet admiration. "You've made something meant for resting," they said gently. "A reminder that you don't need corners inside yourself all the time." They placed the carved piece into your palm. It fit perfectly, warm, softly weighted, comforting. You held it for a moment, feeling your fingers curl around the new shape, the smooth reassurance of something carefully tended by your own hands. Then, without ceremony, the caretaker guided you back to the listening lantern. You placed the small carved piece beside it. The lantern glowed slightly deeper, not brighter, as though quietly welcoming a new companion to its space of gentle witness. No words were needed. Something inside you felt respectfully acknowledged. The caretaker rested their elbows gently on the table, leaning in just enough to be near. "There is a reason all this is done at night," they explained softly. "Daylight asks us to do. Nighttime invites us to be." Their voice carried the softness of old wisdom spoken without weight. "When people arrive here," they continued, "they sometimes believe they must figure out everything before tomorrow. But wood knows something different. It understands seasons, that growth comes quietly, invisibly, under the surface, without pressure." You looked around the workshop. Every shelf, every tool, every carving seemed to echo the same message: patience. Not waiting as a struggle, waiting as a gentle companionship. The caretaker stood and went to the main window, peering thoughtfully out at the riverbank. "Come," they said softly. You joined them at the window. The moon had dipped slightly lower, casting longer silver ripples across the river. Mist drifted just above the surface, thin, graceful curls of vapor that moved slowly like thoughts finding places to rest. Notice how the water doesn't try to hold the reflections. The caretaker whispered, "They arrive and they pass." You watched, and suddenly the simple motion of water became a lesson more calming than words could explain. Reflections came. Nothing clung, nothing forced. The caretaker allowed silence to expand again. The night felt almost infinite in its softness. After a while, the caretaker gently touched the window frame, a signal, not a command, and turned back toward the listening lantern. "There is one more part of the workshop," they said, "that reveals itself only when quiet has settled enough. If you'd like to see it." You nodded, curiosity blooming not as excitement, but as a calm invitation. They led you toward an unassuming corner. A curtain of soft woven fabric hung against the wall, earth toned, embroidered with simple leaf patterns. The caretaker moved it aside. Behind it stood a narrow doorway, not hidden, just patient. Beyond the doorway lay a small alcove-lined floor to ceiling with shelves. Each shelf held a single wooden box, crafted with careful hands. No locks, no labels, only subtle carvings on the lids, shapes that seemed both familiar and unreadable, like dreams. This, the caretaker said, voice hushed, is the place of things that learned how to rest fully. You stepped into the alcove. The air felt slightly warmer, as if the room remembered every breath that had ever softened here. These boxes don't hold secrets, the caretaker continued. They hold peace, the peace people found when they realized they didn't have to carry everything alone. Their eyes drifted over the shelves, not searching, just appreciating. No one opens them. They added softly. What they contain no longer asks for attention. It simply sleeps. The word sleeps floated through your mind like a lullaby. Not final, not distant, just quiet. The caretaker guided you back to the workshop, drawing the curtain gently closed again. Someday, they said, the carving you made tonight may choose to rest there. Not now, not soon. Only when it no longer needs reminding anyone of anything. You smiled softly, comforted by the knowledge that even the objects in this workshop were granted the gift of time. Returning to the workbench, you felt the night deepen in an almost embracing way. The caretaker lit a final lantern near the door, its glow subtle, shaped like sunrise more than daylight. It seemed to say, when the time comes, leaving will be gentle too. They looked at you with the same quiet kindness they had carried since the moment you arrived. You are entering the softest part of night, they said. The part that holds dreams in its hands. You could feel it, the slowness, the drifting, the exquisite permission to release the last threads of wakefulness whenever they wished to slip free. They poured one last cup of tea, this one with notes of lavender and vanilla, and set it before you. The steam rose like the faintest whisper, curling upward, fading into the lantern light. No thoughts to solve, they said tenderly. Only breath, only warmth, only the steady glow of the night keeping watch. You sipped, and the world softened like velvet. The carvings around the room blurred slightly, not disappearing, just becoming dreamlike, as if the workshop itself was easing towards sleep. You returned to the small carved lantern you'd chosen earlier. Holding it felt like holding the night's gentleness itself. You placed it close to your chest for a moment, letting its polished surface warm against your palms. The caretaker nodded quietly, affirming something shared, something wordless. Then they dimmed several lanterns, leaving only the listening lantern glowing steadily, the heart of the workshop beating calm into the room. One by one, shadows became softer shapes. The grain in the wood faded into smooth golden hues. The river's murmuring drifted through the window like distant lullaby music. The caretaker's voice reached you again, softer now than ever before. Soon you will rest, they said, and the workshop will rest with you. Nothing is unfinished tonight. Everything is exactly as it needs to be. You let the words surround you, like a blanket gently tucked around your shoulders. Outside, a faint breeze brushed the trees. Leaves whispered into the dark, not asking to be heard, simply existing in their quiet conversation with the night. Inside, the lanterns kept their patient glow. The tools slept in their resting places, and the wood carried centuries of serenity in its grain. The caretaker stepped back, giving you the full comfort of stillness. The amber lantern workshop felt complete, not because anything had ended, but because every moment had been allowed to be enough. And as the night deepened into its softest hours, everything, the river, the moon, the shadows, the carvings, the silence, came together into one vast, gentle promise. You are safe. You are welcome. You are allowed to rest. Night moved calmly across the quiet town, like a shawl drawn gently across tired shoulders. Outside the workshop windows, the sky deepened into velvet shades of blue, and the first distant stars shimmered with slow, patient glows. They looked content to simply exist, not rushed, not demanding, just quietly shining. Inside the amber lantern workshop, the air felt warmer, softer, more serene than ever. The old floorboards barely whispered beneath your steps. The scent of polished wood, faint honeyed wax, and that sweet hint of citrus lingered gently in the room, like a memory that didn't want to fade too quickly. Everything seemed slower here. The flicker of candlelight, the gentle sway of the lanterns, the soft drift of your own thoughts. You noticed how your breathing had matched the room's rhythm, in and out, each breath easing something loose, each breath setting something gently down. The hearthkeeper, that calm, steady presence who guided the workshop, adjusted one of the amber lanterns on the central table. Its glow deepened, rich like melted gold, spilling light across the carved figures that now surrounded you. You saw tiny scenes captured forever, a carved cat curled into sleep near a window, a small boat resting peacefully on still waters, hands folded gently around a cup of tea, a child's laughter caught mid-smile. Each carving held a quiet story, not dramatic, not grand, just beautifully human. gentle moments that so often go unnoticed in the rush of ordinary days. Here, they were honored. Here, they mattered. And somewhere inside, you began to feel that your quieter moments mattered too. The hearthkeeper lifted their eyes, smiling softly, as if they could sense where your thoughts had wandered. Memories don't always need to be loud to have meaning, they said in a hush-like tone. Some of the most important ones are whispers. You felt that truth settle inside you like a small stone placed carefully into a pocket. Not heavy, grounding, reassuring. The evening deepened. Lantern by lantern, the workshop slowly dimmed, not suddenly, not sharply. Each light faded in its own time, like a sunset passing through many colors before finally resting in twilight. The hearthkeeper invited you toward the back of the room. There stood the largest lantern of all, tall, softly glowing, its glass etched with swirling patterns of leaves, stars, and flowing rivers. Inside it, instead of a simple flame, there shimmered what looked like gentle waves of amber light, moving as though stirred by an invisible breeze. This lantern keeps the stories safe, the hearthkeeper murmured, not trapped, simply held, so they never have to be carried alone. You watched the light ripple. It was mesmerizing. Within the glow, faint shapes seemed to appear, silhouettes of people walking, resting, laughing, thinking. Not specific enough to see faces, just impressions of lives gently remembered. The hearthkeeper invited you to lay your hand on the side of the lantern. Warmth met your palm, not hot, just deeply soothing. The same kind of warmth you might feel from sunlight filtered through curtains in the early morning. Your breathing slowed even more. Your shoulders softened. You were invited silently, instinctively, to place one memory here as well. Not one that hurt, not one heavy with sorrow. Something small, something kind. Perhaps the feeling of sitting near a window on a rainy afternoon. A shared smile with someone you cared about. The quiet relief of finishing a long day and finally resting. Anything gentle, anything peaceful. You didn't need to say it aloud. You simply thought of it, and the lantern glow pulsed softly, almost gratefully. Now, the hearthkeeper whispered, "It's safe. It will rest with all the others. You don't have to hold it anymore." And you felt, in some subtle way, that you truly didn't. A kind tiredness, the good, sleepy kind, drifted through your body. Not exhaustion, not overwhelm, just a steady invitation to soften, to let go, to sink deeper into ease. The hearthkeeper guided you to one of the comfortable chairs near the wood shaving stove, still warm, its embers glowing faintly like quiet hearts. The workshop hush grew thicker, but it wasn't empty silence. It was the kind of silence full of presence, like being wrapped in blankets. The hearth keeper moved slowly through the room, making small, simple gestures, aligning tools, covering unfinished carvings with soft cloths, turning wicks gently down. Everything done in rhythm, everything done without hurry. You realized here even endings were gentle. Nothing was closed with force. Nothing was rushed out the door. Everything was allowed to rest. You leaned back and let your eyes wander lazily. The rafters above caught the last traces of lantern glow and softened them into warm shadows. Dust motes floated lazily in the air, drifting like tiny stars. The window panes reflected both the outside night and the inside lanterns at once, merging worlds, the peaceful interior and the quiet sky beyond. The hearth keeper returned and sat across from you, resting their hands loosely together. People think they must hold themselves tightly together, they said softly, as if rest will make them fall apart. But rest doesn't break us. Rest allows what was scattered to quietly return. Their voice felt like warm fabric brushed across your thoughts. You didn't feel the need to respond. The silence was enough. Time unfolded in long, soothing stretches. At some point, the hearth keeper rose again and approached the great amber lantern. Very carefully, they turned the small brass key at its base. The light shifted, not darkening immediately, simply deepening, like twilight leaning toward night. Everything has its night, they said gently, even stories. They glanced toward you, smiling not sadly, just knowingly. But night isn't an ending. Night is the space where we can breathe and dream and mend quietly. They extinguished one lantern, then another, then another. Each small fade of light felt like a soft breath being exhaled into the room, leaving nothing empty, only calmer. You let your eyes drift closed for a moment. When they opened again, the room was lit by only 2 lanterns, the great amber one, and one simple lantern hanging near the door. Before you go, the hearth keeper said, "There is something I want you to remember." They took one of the unfinished wooden figurines from the table. It was simple, just the outline, the beginning of a form, but graceful, patient, not rushed into completion. They placed it gently into your hands. This is your carving, not finished, because you are still shaping your days, still gathering moments, still discovering your softness. The wood was smooth beneath your fingertips. You could imagine what it might someday become, but there was no pressure to know. It was allowed to remain in progress. You were allowed to remain in progress. You don't have to be perfect to deserve rest. The hearth keeper continued quietly. You don't have to earn peace. You are already allowed to exhale. The words settled deep, beyond thought, beyond analysis, into that quiet inner space where acceptance lives. The hearth keeper opened the door just slightly, letting in a whisper of cool night air. It mixed with the warm workshop atmosphere, like a lullaby blending two notes together. The town outside lay peaceful, windows dimming, streets quiet, rooftops holding starlight. Somewhere, wind gently shifted through nearby trees, carrying a faint, leafy rustle. You stood slowly, easily, feeling supported rather than pushed. Your body felt heavier in that pleasant, sleepy way. Your thoughts had become smooth and unhurried. As you stepped toward the door, you glanced back one last time. The lanterns glowed low. The carvings rested quietly. The great amber lantern shimmered like a small captured sunset about to drift into night. And the hearth keeper, standing quietly near the workbench, lifted a hand in a gentle farewell. Whenever you need to lay something down, they said, the workshop will be here. Lanterns will be ready. The room will remember. You didn't leave with sadness. You left with warmth, like a soft ember carried inside your chest, steady and calm, guiding you gently through the darkness without effort. Outside, the path away from the workshop was lit by faint starlight and the tender echo of the lantern's glow behind you. Each step felt softer. The night wrapped around you like velvet fabric, and the world seemed slower, quieter, kinder. And as you walked, or maybe drifted, you realized that part of you had already begun sinking gently towards sleep. Thoughts blurred into peaceful shapes. The rhythm of your breath became the only sound that mattered. In and out, like waves smoothing the shore, like lantern light dimming gently, like a story folding itself closed for rest. The amber lantern workshop faded slowly into the night behind you, not lost, not gone, simply becoming part of the quiet landscape of your dreams, waiting there whenever your tired mind might need another place to rest, a place of carved memories, of slow evenings, of steady warmth, a place where nothing was expected of you, except to soften and sleep. The night has grown so quiet now, quiet in the way that feels safe, like the world has finally remembered how to rest. Somewhere, far in the distance, the last glow of the amber lantern fades into the darkness, not disappearing, only softening, like a memory that knows it can return whenever it's needed. And you, here wrapped in stillness, have nothing left you need to carry. Your thoughts can loosen. Your breath can deepen. Your body can finally trust the bed beneath it. There is nothing to solve now, nothing to fix, nothing to prepare for. All of that belongs to tomorrow, and tomorrow will come gently in its own time. For now, the night is yours. Feel how every muscle slowly unwinds across your neck, your shoulders, your back. Feel how your jaw softens, how your forehead smooths, how your hands grow heavy in the quiet. Even your heartbeat seems calmer, as if it too understands. This is a place of rest. Imagine a small, steady glow somewhere inside your chest, the echo of the lantern's warmth. It doesn't flicker wildly. It doesn't demand attention. It simply glows, patient, kind, always there when you need comfort. With every breath, it spreads just a little more. Not brighter, just calmer. And in that calm, your mind begins to drift, like a leaf carried gently along a slow river. No resistance, no direction needed. The water knows where to go. The night knows how to hold you. If a thought appears, it can pass like a cloud. If a memory shows up, it can soften at the edges. Everything is allowed to float quietly away. Because here, you are safe. You are allowed to pause. You are allowed to be unfinished. You are allowed to simply rest. The world outside continues its quiet rhythms, leaves whisper. Stars linger. Distant roofs hold the night like a lullaby. And somewhere, in that quiet corner of imagination, the workshop remains, lanterns sleeping, carvings resting, the hearth keeper keeping watch with gentle patience. You do not need to go back there now. You do not need to move at all. Just knowing it exists is enough. Let your eyelids grow heavy. Let your breathing fall into its slow, steady rhythm. Let the softness stretch all the way to the tips of your fingers and toes. If sleep comes softly, welcome it. If it comes slowly, that's okay too. You have already stepped into peace. You are wrapped in warmth. You are surrounded by quiet. You are held by the night itself. And as you drift deeper and deeper, the last flicker of worry fades, replaced by the gentle certainty that you can return to this calm whenever your mind grows tired again. Rest now. Breathe. Let the story dissolve into dreams. The lantern glows faintly in the distance, and you drift and drift and sleep